I watched Derek's smug face fill my screen, the LED ring light casting a holy glow around his carefully tousled hair. He was live streaming from the launch event, walking across a matte black stage with startup swagger, as the crowd applauded his game-changing innovation. Game-changing. He'd even stolen my words. Our proprietary voice tone analysis engine empowers real-time emotional wellness insights, he said, gesturing to the oversized slide behind him. The logo, Serenity AI, flickered softly like it was trying to whisper you to sleep. Except it wasn't his engine. It was mine. And I had the commit history to prove it. I took a slow sip of coffee, bitter and cold. Appropriate. I'd stopped reacting with anger weeks ago. Rage was a sharp flame, but I needed something that burned longer. Something slow, patient and surgical. Something like code. The screen split to a demo. A woman video chatting with her therapist while Serenity AI's interface gently labeled her emotional states in real time. Anxious, reassured, calm, smooth UX, soft gradients, clean design. He hadn't changed a single thing. That was the point. Because Derek never knew I left a trap inside. A year ago, I was still at Lumos Systems, another perfectly lit VC-fueled tech startup trying to humanize AI. I was one of the lead engineers, which meant I was also one of the most invisible women in the room until I wasn't. I'd been building on a side project, an AI that could analyze the tone of someone's voice and give feedback to help them regulate their emotional responses. Not in a surveillance kind of way, more like a personal mirror. Private, consent-based, empowering. I pitched it during an internal hackathon, half expecting it to die like most ideas do in those pitch and pizza circles. But Derek was there, VP of product, the kind of guy who knew how to repeat your idea in a deeper voice and somehow make everyone nod along. He was enthusiastic, too enthusiastic, said it was exactly the kind of thing we should incubate. Scheduled meetings, set up Slack channels, even brought me into a few investor previews. Felt like something real. I felt seen for once, not just as a code monkey but as a founder. And then, nothing. Meetings got rescheduled, then cancelled. He stopped replying to my Slack messages. When I bumped into him in the kitchen one morning, he gave me that vacant startup smile. Yeah, we're going in a different direction. 2 months later he quit Lumos, disappeared off LinkedIn. Rumors said he'd moved to New York. Others said he was quietly building something. Now here he was, grinning on stage like a TED Talk fever dream, launching a product that had my fingerprints all over it. He'd even used the demo I left on the server. I knew because I saw the glitch in the corner of the interface, something I'd patched in my own build, but had left broken in the decoy. He didn't even bother to check the code. Didn't ask who trained the model. Didn't wonder if maybe the brilliant female engineer he ignored might have had one last card to play. That was his mistake. See, Derek didn't just steal my idea. He stole something designed to look perfect but built to fail. And now it was live. Millions watching. Clients testing. Algorithms classifying. He thought he'd won. But Derek never checked what was really inside the demo I left on his server. The day I found out Derek had stolen my idea wasn't cinematic. No dramatic email. No confrontation. Just a soft ping, an investor pitch deck circulating on Twitter, a friend tagging me with a "Didn't you build this?" in the comments. There it was, Serenity AI, with a product description nearly word for word from my original proposal. My emotional tone mapping model, the same color-coded UX overlays I sketched in Figma, even my tagline, "Understand how you feel before you say how you feel." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I opened my terminal. They teach you in machine learning to never trust your own data. Bias leaks in like smoke, through your assumptions, your training samples, even your good intentions. That's why I'd built my original prototype with obsessive care. Datasets curated with full consent, model weights tuned for inclusivity, dialect-aware tuning for underrepresented voices. I'd trained it to not just work, but to listen. But the version I left on the shared Lumos server, the one I knew Derek had access to, that one was different. It was the early build, the proof of concept I showed during Pitch Week. Clean on the surface, slick in the demo. But underneath it was still raw. I'd stripped out the newer training sets, disabled a few of the fairness constraints. I didn't delete them entirely. I'm not careless. I just rewired them. In this version, the model could still classify emotional tone, but with notable inaccuracies in specific edge cases. Women with deeper voices were often mislabeled as agitated. Clients speaking with Southern or Caribbean accents frequently got tagged as hostile or anxious. And queer couples. The classifier couldn't recognize their intimacy. It labeled them as argumentative 40% of the time, simply because the training data lacked proper representation. Most people wouldn't notice in a 5-minute demo. But in the wild, with real users, the ethical holes would bleed through fast. And I made sure I'd know the moment they did. I embedded a silent logging script, just a few lines tucked deep in a helper function. Nothing malicious. No spyware. It simply pinged a remote endpoint whenever the system analyzed a unique user session. Time, location, metadata, emotional category results. Encrypted. Quiet. Harmless. Unless you were trying to hide what you'd stolen. I named the endpoint /ethics ghost. Just for me. My motivations weren't just about vengeance, though I'd be lying if I said that wasn't part of it. I wanted Derek to fail, yes. But more than that, I wanted the world to see what happened when people like him skipped the hard part, the human part, of AI development. He thought he could wrap an algorithm in soft UI and empty language about wellness, and no one would question the impact. He didn't care if the AI labeled a black teenager as threatening, or told a transgender woman her voice sounded aggressive. He cared about launch dates, market buzz, scalable nonsense. So I gave him what he wanted. The glittering surface. The hollow inside. I remember sitting at my desk, just a cheap IKEA table shoved in the corner of my apartment, with 3 monitors glowing old GPU fans humming underfoot, and a warm beer sweating beside my keyboard. That's when I uploaded the decoy build to the company's deprecated dev server. I named the folder Serenity fictional. Classic misdirection. Then I quit. 2 weeks' notice. No drama. Just a short exit interview where I smiled and said I wanted to explore independent projects. Derek never asked me anything. He assumed I was done. The real version lives in my garage, running on GPU scraps and righteous fury. Call it Empathica. Smarter. Slower. Better trained. Built with ethical transparency from the first line of code. It doesn't just classify feelings, it understands context, questions itself. It explains its reasoning, flags its uncertainty, asks for feedback. It learns with consent. No, it doesn't scale easily. And no, VCs aren't exactly lining up to fund slow AI with moral safeguards. But it's mine. All of it. And while Derek was polishing his pitch deck and rehearsing his soft smile TED Talk voice, I was rewriting what this technology should be. His AI was a mirror with a filter. Mine is a lens that adjusts. Now he's on stage, grinning into applause, deploying my Trojan horse to the world. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just waiting for the screams. The applause on the live stream was deafening, even through my laptop speakers. Derek stood at the center of the stage, arms outstretched like a televangelist. His designer sneakers planted firmly on Serenity blue carpet. Behind him, Serenity's logo glowed like a digital halo. He wore that curated casual look, rolled-up sleeves, open collar, sincerity on demand. And with Serenity AI, we're finally bringing emotional wellness into the digital age, he said, voice perfectly measured. For conversations that understand you better than people do. Blick. The feed cut to a slick demo reel. Diverse actors in staged scenarios. A teen venting to her mom, a man in a boardroom practicing conflict resolution, a therapist offering silent, affirming nods as the Serenity overlay hovered beside their faces. Words like confident, calm, stressed, popped up in real time, reassuring, unobtrusive, totally fake. The Twitter reactions rolled in faster than I could scroll. At TechCrunch, Serenity I could be the Fitbit for feelings. Huge launch moment. At fictional 69. Invest early. Emotional UX is the next frontier. Hashtag Serenity hashtag disrupt emotions. At ethics no. Excited but cautious. Hope they've done the work on bias plus accuracy. I refreshed my logging dashboard. The hits started trickling in. My embedded tracker, the /ethics ghost endpoint, was lighting up with live data. Real user sessions. Real people. The exact same build I'd left behind. No changes to the emotional classifier. No updated weights. Not even a new model name. Derek had launched my prototype exactly as it was. Raw, untested, and ethically radioactive. By noon, Serenity I was trending. By 2 p.m. so was its first mistake. A video clip went viral. A black woman on a video call with her employer. She spoke calmly, advocating for a schedule change due to family obligations. But Serenity I's overlay labeled her tone as agitated. The employer, relying on the insight, ended the meeting early. The caption said, "Apparently, standing up for myself is an emotional problem. Thanks, Serenity AI." 30 minutes later, another clip. A queer couple FaceTiming about their weekend plans. The overlay read argumentative, despite their laughter. Someone screenshotted the result and tweeted, "Is your AI homophobic or just broken?" By nightfall, hashtags had spawned. Hashtag Serenity fail. Hashtag bias by design. Hashtag emotion not surveillance. I watched it all from my couch, lights off, dashboard glowing in the dark. Pings kept coming. Some sessions marked inconclusive, others flagged weird tonal mismatches, like detecting anger when the speech transcript showed jokes. The classifier was failing and publicly. I refreshed Hacker News. Serenity I had hit the top post. Startup launches emotion AI. It's already hurting people. There were screenshots, takedown threads, and someone had found the original pitch video Derek had posted on YouTube. They'd matched it with my old GitHub profile. A few eagle-eyed developers noticed a line of code I had commented with a handle. Hashtag dev at Josode. Someone posted, "Hey at Joe_code, any chance you built this? Or is Derek lying again?" My phone buzzed with DMs. Tech reporters. Former co-workers. A couple of ethics professors I admired. One message stood out. It was from a user, not anyone famous. Just a dad. "My daughter has anxiety. She used Serenity today. It told her she was unstable, while she was having a panic attack. She hasn't left her room since. Did you build this?" That one hurt. I stared at the screen for a long time. I'd never meant for real people to be harmed. The prototype wasn't supposed to go live. It was never meant to pass through real-world filters. But Derek hadn't filtered anything. He just took, shipped and smiled. He'd cut the safety nets, and now the whole world was falling through. News anchors picked it up. A panel on MSNBC debated it that night. Can we trust emotional AI? Where's the line between insight and intrusion? Who's responsible when an algorithm makes a personal judgment call? Serenity AI's press team released a statement calling it an isolated calibration issue. I almost laughed. The next day, an open letter from the Center for Ethical AI condemned the launch. Dozens of signatories, academic firepower, policy experts, engineers, human rights orgs. Investors began issuing statements distancing themselves. One called for Derek to resign. Another paused funding. I opened the Serenity AI launch video again. Froze the frame on his smiling face. I zoomed in, just enough to catch the corner of the screen behind him. There it was, the UI glitch I had left in the decoy build. A rendering bug in the emotional confidence graph. I'd left it there like a signature. Proof. I leaned back and let out a slow breath. My fingers hovered over my keyboard. Tomorrow I'd write the article. I'd explain everything. Not in a rant. Not with vengeance. Just the truth. Laid out plainly, time-stamped, documented, ethical. I take responsibility for my part. I wouldn't hide. Because I wasn't the one who ran that flawed code into the public like it was ready. That was Derek. He wanted to steal my vision and skip the work. But he'd skipped the warning signs too. And now, the house he built on stolen code was on fire. Closed my laptop. And now it was my turn. I opened a blank Medium draft. Not a Google document. Not a tweet thread. Not a rant into the void. This had to live somewhere public and permanent, something that felt archival, like a ledger, like evidence. I typed the title without flinching. I built the AI that harmed you. And I did it to prove a point. I stared at it for a moment, fingers hovering over the keys. Then I started to write. I never intended to build something that would hurt people. But I also never intended for my work to be stolen, repackaged, and deployed without safeguards. If you used Serenity AI and felt judged, misunderstood, or harmed by its emotional feedback, I want you to know that the code it runs on began as mine. And what you're seeing now is exactly what I feared would happen when ethics are treated as an afterthought. I laid it out as calmly and clinically as I could. I wasn't here to flame Derek, or dunk on his unraveling company. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was a confession and a warning. I explained the original concept. An AI voice tone classifier meant to help users privately understand their emotional states. Consent-based. Privacy first. Bias audited. Then I explained how, inside my old job at Lumo Systems, I pitched that very idea. And how Derek, then VP of Product, took an intense interest in it. I included a screenshot of our Slack chat. Derek, yo, this thing could be a unicorn. Derek, you're seriously onto something. I included a screenshot of the meeting invite for our second investor preview session, where I was mysteriously removed from the guest list. Then came the logs. Git commits showing my development of the prototype. Time-stamped exports. The metadata proving the model hadn't been altered from the version I'd last stored on the company server. I annotated a side-by-side image of Serenity AI's interface and my original demo UI, noting the same layout, colors, even the same copy I had written months ago. I embedded my changelog history, showing how certain bias mitigation functions were disabled in that build, and how anyone with minimal oversight would have seen that it wasn't production ready. The version of the AI that Serenity launched was a proof of concept, intentionally incomplete. It was never designed for public use. It lacked dialect-aware tuning, emotional nuance corrections, and context verification. These are not bugs, they are missing safety systems. Like deploying a car with no brakes. Then I shared what I'd done, quietly, methodically, with full intent. I described the trap I'd left in the code. The tracking logs. The deliberately flawed behavior in edge cases. Not to harm users, but to ensure I would know if the stolen version went live. I didn't defend the decision. I wanted the world to see what happens when we prioritize launch speed and investor hype over human impact. But in doing so, I still let something broken reach real people. And for that, I am sorry. I included one last section. A list of ethical design principles I'd originally embedded in the full version of the model. The one Derek never saw, the one still training quietly in my garage. Emotional accuracy should not favor neutrality over nuance. All AI classifications must be explainable to the user. Models must be trained on consented, representative data. Systems must fail gracefully when uncertain, not confidently mislabel. Feedback loops must include those most impacted, not just developers. At the very end, I linked the repo logs and included a public note. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for change. If you're building AI, especially AI that interprets or classifies human behavior, this is your reminder. You are accountable for the people your product will misread. I hit publish at 2:14 a.m. Then I closed my laptop, curled up on the couch with a blanket, and waited for the world to wake up. It didn't take long. By 6 a.m., the post had 3,000 views. By 9 a.m., it was trending on Hacker News, Twitter, and Threads. By noon, it had crashed my Medium inbox. The comments poured in, some angry, some grateful, all visceral. You're the only engineer I've seen take actual responsibility for bias. As a black woman, I knew Serenity felt off. Thank you for exposing this. I've worked in startups for a decade. This is every woman in tech story ever. You just finally said it out loud. You're a whistleblower. Don't let anyone call it sabotage. I received emails from reporters, invitations to speak on podcasts, panels, universities. Several former Serenity AI engineers messaged me privately. One simply wrote, "You were right. We all knew it." But no one wanted to say anything. A VC I'd pitched 2 years ago sent me a LinkedIn message. "I passed on your original idea. That was a mistake. Can we talk?" Even some of Derek's backers began distancing themselves publicly. One republished my Medium post in their investor newsletter under the subject, "Due diligence means ethics too." I did one interview. Just one. NPR Tech Podcast. I spoke slowly, deliberately. I said, "We can't keep pretending tech is neutral. Algorithms are just mirrors of our priorities. The question is, who gets to hold the mirror? And who gets distorted in the reflection?" After that, I went dark again. No press tour. No book deal. No brand building. I didn't want to become famous for building a flawed AI. I just wanted people to stop pretending that emotional tech could be apolitical, bias-free, or universally helpful without asking helpful to whom. The Medium post became its own kind of prototype, a living document, a conversation starter, a blueprint. And the AI industry. It did what industries do. Some doubled down. Others paused. But a few, just a few, started asking better questions. And that was enough for now. By the end of the week, Serenity was dead. Investors issued terse, lawyer-proofed statements distancing themselves from the unexpected technical oversights. One firm pulled $3.2 million in funding before the ink had dried on their Series A. Another issued a public apology, not for funding Derek, but for failing to demand ethical auditing in the first place. The app vanished from both app stores within 48 hours. The website redirected to a static splash page. We're currently re-evaluating our commitment to ethical AI. By Monday, the lawsuits started. One class action from a privacy watchdog group. Another from a former Serenity AI engineer who'd raised concerns internally and was allegedly told to focus on shipping, not sentiment. The press had a field day. Wired ran a story titled, "The Empathy Machine That Couldn't Feel." MIT Tech Review called it, "The Theranos of Emotion AI." But the real frenzy centered around me. Some headlines called me a visionary, others a saboteur. One particularly breathless blog referred to me as the woman who set fire to her own code. Everyone wanted a follow-up. In Times, a streaming docuseries producer sent me a cold email titled, "Want to tell your side of the story?" I gave one interview, an anonymous audio-only call with an independent ethics podcast. I used a voice filter. I asked for no name, no promotion, no dramatization. I told them, I didn't want to destroy Serenity. I wanted to prove that releasing emotional AI without ethical foundations is the same as releasing an unfinished drug without trials. People get hurt. We need to stop treating those harms like acceptable casualties in the race to disrupt everything. Then I disappeared again. No panels. No keynotes. No Twitter threads. Just silence. 3 weeks later, I swiped my keycard at the front door of a shared co-working space buried on the 3rd floor of a former garment factory in Brooklyn. It still smelled faintly like machine oil and ambition. I walked past the coffee station and into a small glass-walled office with 2 desks and 4 whiteboards. One was covered in marker-scribbled ideas. The other had a single sticky note stuck to the center. Empathica doesn't guess. It asks. My team was small. 2 engineers, 1 social worker turned AI ethicist, and a part-time UX designer who had left her job at a dating app because it felt predatory. Averse, thoughtful, exhausted but energized. We were still pre-launch. Still running our emotional recognition model on noisy borrowed GPUs. Still battling datasets for bias. still tweaking consent flows until they were actually understandable to a regular human being. I sat down at my desk and opened the Empathica dashboard. Lines of clean code. A model that didn't make predictions unless it had confidence. A classifier that flagged itself when it encountered voices it didn't know how to handle, instead of pretending it did. We called them soft fail states. Empathy built into the logic. I clicked on one of the most recent session logs. A user had spoken in a thick accent the model hadn't yet encountered. Instead of mislabeling their tone, it paused and responded with a prompt. "I'm still learning. Would you like to help me understand how you're feeling?" The user had responded, tired but hopeful. Smiled. That was the future I wanted to build. Not AI that pretended to know everything. Not AI that turned people into metrics. Just machines that admitted what they didn't know, and left room for people to speak for themselves. I leaned back, took a deep breath, and looked out the window at the city stretching far beyond our little corner of it. And as for Derek, I never reached out. Never needed to. He tried to steal a system that could see people. But he never saw me. I didn't burn his house down. I just turned on the light and let the world see what he built in the dark.